take over my state of Britain and play Brexit games with us, just beggars belief. And Alan Duncan's book reveals that anyone speaking out in favour of Palestine gets blocked in promotion in the Tory party. That's why his career was blocked. Well, hang on, that's treasonous, actually. Whoever's enabled that, and that's Boris Johnson and his entire cabinet, Priti Patel, that's why I say they're committing treason. They're committing treason not just against the British people and against the British state. And they've done it in the name of this Brexit, which was itself a treasonous act. The way the referendum was run, there was no safeguards, the whole thing was done on the hoof and with lies, no consequences. I mean, the whole thing was a treasonous act. And we now realise from Alan Duncan's revelations that it was sort of engineered by the Israeli embassy in London. I mean, if the penny isn't dropping yet, my friends, it ought to. What I'm saying is enough is enough is enough. Let's solve this at source. And one of the ways we can do that is by creating a proper, authentic Palestinian state equal to this hegemonic, mad state that's run away with its own hubris, forgetting its Bible. Read the Bible. God doesn't like hubris. God is on the side of the poor, the oppressed, as Liz Theoharis said at last year's wonderful Midsummer Stonehenge Peace Festival. She closed our event, and she campaigns with this wonderful group in the USA about the poor. She's a Christian minister who is in the tradition of Martin Luther King. These are people working for racial equality and poverty equality in America, as is Biden. So anyway, ICEPS will do its work, and I will report back on that in future. And in relation to that, I'm also working still steadfastly. I'm a Torean, so I do what I say I will do, on my commentary on the Quran, which is now in its 10th year. I mean, gosh, if I was just an imam and a Quranic scholar, this would be all I do, right? Most people that's enough. I wish I had time just to devote to my Quranic commentary, because it's a labour of love. I've gone into it in as much depth as I can, and there's so much one could say, but I'm working at the moment on Surah 42, which is a wonderful late Meccan surah, and it's the essential message of this surah is that you have to dissolve the ego. The whole point of Islam, if you listen to my commentary and or any other great scholars and philosophers who've looked at these matters, Islam is the state that comes after you've dissolved your ego, your hard-heartedness, your me-first type attitude, which is present among these arrogant politicians who are behind Brexit and behind nationalism, these populist buffoons. And it's interesting that people like Trump and Johnson, they're all anti-Islamic, and Netanyahu, they're all chums of Netanyahu, and they're all anti-Islamic because their egos are so vast, they cannot surrender. They don't understand the very thing they're ranting and raving against, Islam, is actually the very thing their soul needs, which is surrender, submission. No, not going to do that. No, we'd rather blow up the whole world, their ego thinks. And that's what ego always thinks. Read Chogyam Trungpa's Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism. Angry monkey ego would literally destroy the entire world rather than just surrender itself to God. And God blots out vanity and proves the truth by his words, for he knows well the secrets of all hearts. He is the one that accepts repentance from his servants and forgives sins, and he knows all that ye do. And he listens to those who believe and do deeds of righteousness, and gives them increase of his bounty. But for the unbelievers, there is a terrible penalty. So, what I'm doing in the commentaries, I'm explaining these verses in depth, and I'm explaining them psychologically, also contextualizing them historically. I'm looking at the Arabic sometimes. I'm looking at the, the matrix of conceptual thinking that goes into these words, both in Arabic and English, and philosophically. And as I say, the fundamental message is that ego cannot flourish. Actions undertaken for egotistical purposes will not last. And it's a powerful text. And this is the text that the people of Gaza and Palestine and my colleagues in Iraq and Pakistan, and Kashmir and so on. I mean, this is the foundational text of the whole of that Middle Eastern Islamic tradition, which the world should read, study, understand. And I'm talking the non-Muslim world. We have a duty to understand it so that we can stop dropping bombs on it. When Trump is finally in prison, as he should be, and all these other crazy people, I hope they have time to listen to my commentary on the Quran. They'll realise the error of what they did. It is not fitting for a man that God should speak to him except by inspiration, or from behind a veil, or by the sending of a messenger, to reveal, with God's permission, what God wills. For he is most high, most wise. The question of inspiration comes up a lot in this particular surah, and I've gone into that. It's a very beautiful concept. I mean, as a philosopher and druid, we work with Arwen, divine inspiration. It comes from the same source as the Quranic inspiration, which comes from the mother of the books. All prophetic scriptures, be it the Vedas, the Buddhist sutras, the Gospels, the Quran, the Torah, they all come from the common ultimate source of universal inspiration. And that is itself what the Quran says, again and again and again. The Quran says, look, I come from the source of all prophets. I come from the place that Abraham, Moses, and Jesus Christ come from. There's nothing different about what I'm saying in the book to what those prophets said. It's always slightly different in the way that it's transmitted. That's what I call prophetic refraction. Each prophetic context in which a sage appears obviously transmits it in the cultural lens of their own epoch. And I've gone into that mathematically in my question of, the mathematics of prophetic, transmission. This is another wonderful verse that I love. Say, it is a guide and a healing to those who believe. And for those who believe not, there is a deafness in their ears. And it is blindness in their eyes. They are, as it were, being called from a place far distant. I find that a very moving verse. That's Surah 41, verse 44. That being called from a place far distant is the essence of that urge to let go of the ego, to surrender your arrogance, your hubris, which is what is underlying Brexit. It's underlying Netanyahu's policies against Palestinians. It's underlying America's policies for so long against the Muslims in Afghanistan and Iraq. It underlay the invasion of Iraq in 2003. It underlay the conspiratorial secret elites that engineered 9/11 in a way that they managed to conceal from history, and who played the Muslims that got involved in it. They haven't got a clue what's going on. Eventually these matters are all referred back to God. That's what the Quran says, again and again. Because God is the divine intelligence. We are just his humble servants. So that attitude of humility and love, I think, is the solution to this whole Middle East problem. If only we had proper Sufis teaching this, proper intellectuals teaching this in every Middle Eastern university, town, city, with proper trained Kabbalists and Christian esotericists, they'd realise they're talking about the same thing. There's not a paper-thin difference between them. What Christ was trying to teach, what Muhammad is teaching, what Moses, what Abraham, what all of them are teaching. Isaac Luria, Moses de Leon, who wrote the Zohar, Spinoza, who put it in his own language in 17th century Holland. These savants, or down to Isaiah Berlin, who was trying to, 20th century Oxford, explain these mysteries. I mean, this is the great tradition, my friends, and that's where I'm coming from. And that's why it's good news, ultimately. We can get through this. These pygmies that are creating conflict in the world are literally, their time is coming to an end, my friends. So look, moving on, I want to share, finally, a couple of little readings of my own works, which is quite fun. I've written this book on magical peacemaking, and that is, I think, I recommend strongly that to anyone that's interested in what I'm talking about, because as a druid, as a seer, in my own right, as a philosopher, I'm trying to sort of reconstruct from this time what do we need now to make possible peace. I mean, other sages and saints before us have laid down what they thought in their time. We can learn from them. Christ, Buddha, Muhammad, Ali, Moses, etc. But we look at them through a glass darkly. We don't know the details. We can't see the exactitude. I mean, that's why I'm going into the Quran in such detail, and why I've done a commentary on the Gospels. I'm trying to understand exactly how Muhammad's prophetic refraction was working as he downloaded these incredible insights and then had to put them into language for us humans. Well, I'm trying to do the same, but I'm trying to do it mathematically and philosophically. So in my book on magical peacemaking, I've created a handbook of skills for practitioners and theoreticians. So, this is the first ever book to combine magical training, be it Druid, Wiccan, Asatru, whatever. There's a whole magical tradition in European culture which has spread also worldwide. It is the indigenous tradition of European civilization. It's the ancient Druid culture that built Stonehenge and Avebury and that laid down the ancient Irish legends of Cuchulainn and all the rest. Cuchulainn's battles are magical battles. That's why he was such a great warrior. Amergin, when he lands in Galway with the Gaelic peoples, he's a magical druid leading this operation, and they fight these magical battles in Ireland. It's not normal warfare. This is sort of, if you think PSYOPs is a new invention, no, of course it isn't. It's how the druids used to do things. So we know all about this, and then there's a huge literature on peace studies, conflict resolution. It's a big industry among academics, and many of my friends are leading players in that, and hats off to them. I have a PhD in peace studies and history. But what I've done is combine the two. I'm the first guy ever to write a book combining the magical work seriously and the peace work seriously. And obviously, as peace druid of Britain and Europe, it's my duty to write this book. And so what I've done is I've explored how peace magic, what it is, and how we can operate with it. And there's 51 chapters which you can look at and work through. And so, and there are topics that you can work with magic in many different ways: seership, channeling, past lives, psychic magic, plants, cyber magic, even time magic, using the tarot, Christianity, Christian magic, enlightenments, wisdom affairs. Relationships are magical, being in loveness. you can use that as a magical tool for peace. It's important to get them in motivation right, the goodwill at the beginning of the whole thing. Non-violence in thought, word and deed. And then I end up with the 4 elements, earth, air, fire and water, which all magicians work with as sacred elements when we cast a circle. And I'm going to read the section on water and peace magic, because water to me is a symbol of cleansing, of baptism. Before you pray in Islam, you wash. Before you can be forgiven in Christianity, you're baptized with water and with the Holy Spirit. So water is a pretty universal symbol. Let me read the key thoughts on water and peace magic so you can get a flavour of what this book is about. As I say, it's totally pioneering. Nobody's written a book like this before, as far as I know, in all of history. Well, it's about time, isn't it? Water is the stuff of life. Without water, life on this planet would not exist. We depend on water for our bodies to function properly, for our drink, blood, internal fluids, tears, cerebrospinal fluid, etc. Water circulates through the atmosphere, oceans, rivers, lakes, wells, rain, mist, in the soil. It is the medium through which life intercommunicates with itself. It makes the fusion of the egg and sperm possible, and the onward evolution of all life forms depend on water from conception to the last breath. Thales, the Greek Phoenician philosopher, said it is the arche, the source of life. It has many magical and physical properties that are awe-inspiring. In homeopathic medicine, it can retain traces of other compounds, which can still heal. In loving sexual exchanges, it's the liquid behind all kisses and all sexual encounters that can transport souls to the lands of bliss. The magical female breast is a temple made for watery milk worship. The phallus arises erect in love when watery blood pumps into it. When moved by deep emotions, we shed tears. Water is a love dance between hydrogen and oxygen atoms. A cow is 74% made of water. A bacterium is 75%. A tomato is 95% water. And a human being is 65% water. Water is miraculous. But where exactly it came from is a mystery. But scientists think it's a closed system. There are about 1.3 billion cubic kilometres of water on Earth, which is a constant amount, until the final burning up of this planet by the expanding red giant Sol. 60% of our planet is covered with water. If life is to be detected on other planets, they will be water worlds like Europa or K2-18b. In any single glass of water, every water molecule in it changes partners billions of times per second. At any one moment, only 15% of them are actually touching. Mostly they are zipping about, changing partners. That's what gives water its elastic quality. Magically, water has been revered by all the ancient primal peoples from time immemorial. Druids worshipped at rivers and wells, waterfalls and lakes, and regarded the land of eternal youth as over the sea. Weapons were cast into water as a symbol of the sovereignty of the goddess over sheer force and power. Water can purify and cleanse, heal and energize. And in Greek philosophy, enlightenment, lysis, means to dissolve problems. Psychoanalysis comes from the same root and means to return the psyche to its liquid state. Anthropologist Elaine Morgan says Homo sapiens evolved in proximity to water. To do water magic is used in Christianity, is thus to lovingly acknowledge our source. Poseidon, Manannan Maclear, Neptune, and the myriad other water deities. Baptism and ablution is used in Christianity, Hinduism, Buddhism, Sikhism, Judaism, Islam, the Baha'i faith, Shintoism, Taoism, Druidry, Wicca, shamanism, and many other spiritual and magical paths. In a human being, the brain and heart are composed of 73% water, and the lungs are about 83% water. Our prayers and our thoughts are made possible because of the watery partnering of oxygen and hydrogen, the primal bonding elements behind life. This is the original peace bond that makes existence possible and shows signs of a matrix of divine consciousness underlying it. The implicate order hidden behind the watery vehicle of spirit, the arche of life. So that's the peace key thoughts on water and peace magic. And then there's an exercise, a practical thing, which is a sort of meditation exercise which you should do ideally with a partner. Then I give examples of water magic in action. I give some do's and don'ts, how to use this, how not. And then I give when to use it, what sorts of things might benefit from water magic. And then I give quotations from past magical thinkers. And the first of those is "Water is the arche of everything" by Thales. And George Herbert, the great Anglican poet, said, "He that will learn to pray, let him go to the sea." So anyway, that's a little glimpse I wanted to share from the peace magic work. And now I want to finish finally with a poem, as is my wont, for this day, D-Day. It's the anniversary of the birth of Pushkin, one of the great poets of history. And so I'm going to read my poem. It's called Apocastasis, which is a Greek word meaning resurrection. And I've been, mindful, talking to my friend from Latvia, who was brought up in the Russian language community of Latvia and who's Russian Orthodox. And I've been watching a film about the massacre of the Romanovs, the killing of their 4 beautiful daughters, Nicholas and Alexandra, who were killed by the Bolshevik fanatics in cold blood. There's a documentary being recently made about them, with advice from Robert Service, who taught at the CEAS where I trained in my history degree. They were told they were going away for, being transferred, but actually they were taken to the cellar of their house in Ekaterinburg and shot in cold blood by these fanatics. Just young girls, slaughtered, and a boy who had haemophilia and who was, bleeding, couldn't stop the bleeding. They weren't a threat to anyone. It's that sort of fanatical political lack of compassion that That's the stuckness that the dissolving of water should heal. Those attitudes of my class is right. You know, in the Bolshevik case, it's my working class is right and gives me the right to kill these people. No, nobody has the right to take a life, except tragically sometimes, you know, in an emergency situation for self-defense or something. This wasn't. This was calculated, cold-blooded murder. And anyway, talking to my friend from Latvia, it was very interesting. So this is a poem about resurrection and apocastasis. The stubborn bonds of love that still bind us as one. The shock of it, the asphyxiation, the drowning for air, the drowning for lack of justice, the beyond tears, sheer shock, howl, supernatural standing over, being pulled out, the ascent, and the body laid to rest. Elsewhere, the caverns of light, the assembling, the judgment against jealousy, the hovering about the body as women came with ointments, the being told to go back, it's not your time, the light stretching itself out in the caverns of the skull, the warm blood like the Mediterranean, swimming about again as keen as a fish, the life force unstoppable, the coming back, the stone bearing a trace of light, the still here, the stillness here, the here-ness still. The subtle bonds of love, silken as dawn cobwebs on the Mount of Olives, that blue-grey dawning, the light rising, strong and hot, the saying too much, the saying nothing, the truth. The bonds of love that still bind us, wear them lightly, wear them with love, wear them as the gentle trace of the eyelids of the beloved's brushes your cheek from such a distance. Wear them lightly as the feather of Ma'at in the judgment halls, beyond the cool grave. The bonds of love that bind us still are light itself, coiled at the core of being. Shiva's flash, Dionysian mind, Allah's friend's smile, creeping around a door into the room. Wakantanka's noble and throated thunderbird roar at the down-falling hot summer rains. Apollo's sheer trajectory above Delphi, arching into the sky. Some new interplanetary dolphin voyager, restless for home from home. The bonds of love that bind us all, And those heavenly ones are coiled into the core of the Logos, itself the weird of words, the trembling of murmurs, the downfalling, cascading light, oozes oils, sandalwood scented into us from paradise, and blessed crimsons of vowels, and chrysanthemum consonants, fecund with orchards of pomegranates, where Chesed and Gevurah sit and share together, steadying the light. It can never go beyond this. The way homewards is always via here. It takes us all to the grave, but it can't keep us there. We're made out of the light. We go home to the place where words come from. Meanwhile, like Theseus, follow the subtle love paths that bind us and get to walk. For the word's wonder still needs working on. Walk on.